I just want to commend the authors, Councilor Linehan and Baker, not only for putting this forward, but for your steadfast advocacy for what I know has been a labor of love for decades for both of you in this space of addiction and recovery services, and really just for your unwavering commitment. And I think the process has been long and deliberate and fair, and for those who would think that this is a contentious body, we all respect each other, and we respect the people who have sent us here to do a job. And I think you demonstrated that respect throughout this process, and so I do thank you for that. I also want to thank those who have weighed in on both sides of this issue, the substance abuse advocates for all they do to support the health of individual, family, and community, and of course our small business community for the role they play in healthy communities as well. And in hearing from the restaurant industry specifically, I do have to say that respectfully, I've heard all that you've offered, but your input is not what informed my decision today. What has informed my decision today is that in my 23 years in government, in my 8 years as an elected official, it has become increasingly clear to me that a problem is not remedied simply by throwing money at it. Despite good intentions and increased financial investment in institutions like our public schools, disparities $1 billion. Disparities still persist, the achievement gap remains, and we are not where we need to be in terms of outcomes. Good intentions and more money do not solve problems. So while I appreciate the intent behind this and the time and the attention dedicated and the passion and the commitment of the makers, without an alignment of priorities, I do not believe this gets to the heart of the matter. Otherwise, it's not dissimilar from development without planning. The ordinance as written is simply too vague. It is not prescriptive enough. Now, I'll speak for me, I don't want to lead the army of no. I'm big on yes if, and it is okay to have conditions. If this ordinance was tied to progressive tax reform and directed towards the service delivery gaps, the challenges that we have heard repeatedly from advocates. There are gender gaps in service. For every 8 beds available to a man, there is only 1 available to a woman. The shortage of treatment and detox beds, a lack of culturally sensitive and competent care for people of color, directed towards proven successful models of treatment and care. It is simply not prescriptive enough. Frank mentioned the need to shift the discussion in our programmatic approach. Well, that should happen before we dedicate more money. Then I would be able to vote in the affirmative. But unfortunately, I cannot support this ordinance as proposed. Now, all of you are aware, and my story is not a unique one, that my father battled an opioid addiction for 16 years. I know intimately the destabilization of a loved one battling addiction. And I know how much it angers me in hindsight that the only way my father could get sober was to be incarcerated. So we have all been affected by this scourge. And since the hurt is felt by everyone, the responsibility and the tax burden should be borne by everyone. This is a national crisis, a statewide issue affecting families, our workforce, and our economy. Frank, you talked about people throughout the state being given a ticket to come to Boston. I mean, I want us to have open arms and to support everyone that's in need. Billy, you talked about us being parochial. There's a shortage of beds for Boston residents because of the people we're helping from all over the Commonwealth. This is a statewide issue. It is a national crisis affecting our families, our workforce, our economy, and no one should be excluded from this work. I am not opposed to a tax, but it should be the right one, and one that is directed towards the appropriate and specific uses that I've outlined, which we hear from advocates. So we need to align our programmatic approaches. We need to be more prescriptive and specific in the dedication of these monies. We should all be advocating for a more robust line item for the Office of Recovery that is right now under our jurisdiction and auspices. And we should be pushing for progressive tax reform. Boston should not uniquely bear the burden for an issue that is affecting the entire state. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Pressley. Councilor Sabi-George, you have the floor. I'd like to remind the audience, please,